because I want there to be more capital in Hamilton County and points beyond, because we at Nooganomics Radio want there to be more prosperity, greater wealth, more optimism, we're very concerned about the use of law to hamper and harass people who are otherwise productive and whose time need not be taken up by pursuing obedience to rules, some of which or many of which don't apply to them in the first place. And so that is why I'm real concerned about abuses by state actors, and why I've given a lot of time in my legal reading and in my own court cases and writing about the court cases of others to explore the reasons of law, how the law works, how the law limits itself, and how it is widely and frequently abused. And I do that, you know, I say fighting a negative because on the other side, I'm endorsing a positive. The positive is confidence in the legal structure, the confidence to invest, the confidence to save, to put money and put capital at risk so that someone might have means of starting a business, right? That's what capital is for. To make money, you have to have money. And one of my reasons for the David Tulis Show is to make that happen. And now I've got a caller live on the line. The number is 800-8949 if you want to get on the air to ask me a question, to help you solve a problem, or to make a comment. What's on your mind? You're live on the air.
I think my phone cut out. This illegal immigration issue is such a problem in America. You know, if you were a parent that died at the hands of these criminals that are coming over and committing crimes, or I think the worst is Miami. And I can tell you how liberal the Trump administration is and the government is. If I were the president, I would send ICE in, and the prima facie evidence for not being a citizen would be you can't speak English. And then I would have a translator let us know where they were from, and if you weren't going for the green card, not illegally, I would immediately deport them. Take them in front of a judge and deport them. If you can't speak English or attempt to speak English or become an American, you don't belong in this country. You tear down the United States, the American flag, and you fly the flag of Mexico or Italy or Ireland, get the hell out of my country. Go to Miami. No one speaks English in Miami. It's either Cuba or, it's not being racist. You're in America. You know, respect our country. We're not going to go to your country and disrespect your country. Go to France. They don't even speak English in France. Go to Quebec, Canada. It's a crime to advertise in English. They understand English, but they won't speak English. No, enough is enough. If they're not going to be Americanized, if you're not going to speak English, get the hell out of my country. And I'll tell you, I would send ICE in. If you don't speak English, prima facie evidence, you're going. You're going in front of a judge. No appeals. You're being dumped back in your country. And as far as the border wall, build the wall and put gun turrets on top of it. Enough is enough. This country is being infected. You want to come here the proper way? You want to learn how to speak English?
Well, this
that's fine.
Mike, I appreciate that. Thanks very much. Mike, Confederate Mike, is enunciating the conservative view, the border control, people control view of the messianic right. The conservative, we have in our political ethic today socialists in charge. There are the conservative socialists who are the Republicans, and then we have the libertine liberal socialists who are they're represented by the Democrats. Those are from the guillotine French, right? The French Revolution. They are the radicals on the left, deconstructive of the church, deconstructive of Christian morality. They are the radicals on the left. Robespierre and the Committee of Safety representing that school of thought. I'm the third option because I would say I'm a Christian with a liberal, a classical liberal framework, a classical liberal understanding. So we are here at the Right Wing Station, David Tulis with Sean Hannity and Alex Jones, our stars. But I am the classical liberal in the morning. So what that means is that I'm balanced to the nationalist, conservative socialist right, which has all in view and very much supports the idea of control by government of innocent people, non-criminal people, subject to the state. And so you see, there's not among the two socialist wings of American politics, there's not really a lot of difference. Just as we say that you have Kerry or Bush running for office, both of them are members of the Skull and Bones, where they masturbate over a skull together. And they're very like each other in their politics and in the outward workings of their ethic, right? Their religious ideas about what matters and what the ultimate source of authority is. That is their judicial ethic. Now, I would say we're going to have liberty and prosperity for Chattanooga and Hamilton County if we follow the more biblical model, which shows this, that there is no executive state. In the biblical model, if you look at the old Hebrew Republic, held by the children of Israel as a trust for some time until they rebelled and wanted a king, they got what they wanted for it to be like the nations around them, right? They followed common sense regulation and used common sense to be like the Philistines and the Amalekites and the Chaldeans with their kings, right? Centralized monarchies, they got that. And within, on the second king, after the second king, there was a revolution and a breaking up of the country. And that's because in God's law, which is in many ways the basis of American common law, and in God's law, which is, by the way, the basis of operation of Chancery Court. Chancery operates in a largely biblical, equitable fashion. It is remarkable, as I'm reading quotes from Gibson's Suits and Chancery about the ethic of equity in Chancery Court here in Hamilton County. But in the biblical model of government, we have no executive state. And the reason we don't in the scriptures is because society and the government of society is left to the individual and to the family. The family and the individual is where government resides. It doesn't reside in experts. It doesn't reside in corporations that are independent of the people, as modern states are today. Independent interests that have their own commercial interests, their own economic interests, their own political, cultural, theological interests, right? The modern state, teaching all of these doctrines through the public school, has its own ethic, which is at almost every point contradictory to true equity, contradictory to true justice, and to freedom and liberty. And so the socialists in the Republican Party and the Democrat Party maintain this system. And my caller, as you'll notice, he wants a wall. He wants machine gun turrets. He wants innocent people to become subject to ICE. And the abuses that bureaucracies always bring upon innocent people who have done nothing wrong, committed no crime. Talking about criminals who are among the immigrants, that is a slander. Okay, there are always criminals in every society, and to point out that because we have a murderer who is an immigrant and who's border hopped several times, that we should create a totalitarian system of social engineering on the border, just shows how schizophrenic the conservatives are, how schizophrenic the right is. They are schizophrenic, and I'd say it's even worse than among the left and among the Democrats. The schizophrenia of the right, with its police state, is worse than that on the left. Because think about this: your Michael Gilliland's in Chattanooga, Chattanooga United for Chattanoogans Organized for Action Verbs, for example. They view the savior state as a mother in an apron, right, with a flower roller in her hand, right, maybe a wedding ring on it. The conservatives, people who would appreciate Mark West, they see the state as the father in a police uniform with his armor on. That's their savior, their God walking on the earth is a cop. And so there's a slight conflict between these two humanistic visions of the future and of government and of society. My own view is biblical and is libertarian. Now the libertarians have numerous problems, and I would put a pox on them as well, because they would say, for example, that there's nothing wrong with prostitution or abortion or gay marriage. They are very blind to God's requirements for human society on points like that. But they have many things right. I'll put it that way. Now in Chattanooga, we want to have. I've been promoting the idea of a sanctuary city, and we can start with an obedience to the law. Now we're told in the press and by the conservatives that by the Washington Star people, for example, by the Steve Gills of our state, by the Tim Boyds running for governor, and Mark Green's, I think he's running for, I don't know, senator or something like that. They want immigration control. They want legal immigration and so on. Well, what they want is a police state. They want E-Verify to force all employers to be federally registered and all employment to be federally registered, instantaneously verifying whether someone can be subject to the federal code through in the point of labor. They want a totalitarian state. They want social engineering of that kind. My argument for making Chattanooga a free city is one, as I was saying, that Mayor Burke, I think, is open to. He's open to this perspective. And the things that he could pick up are really amazing. And if he leaves office, then it will be perhaps for his successor to implement. But I think the city council can get started on it. Here's what I think we should say to the city council: of making Chattanooga a haven for oppressed people, a haven for the poor, the minority, and the immigrant. Again, people whom are protected by God's law. They're specifically enumerated in the law as God favoring. God favors them. God wants them protected, and He requires equal law for them. They cannot be given a separate law. You cannot have a separate law for the stranger as you have for the homeborn. A stranger in Chattanooga and Hamilton County, a Guatemalan, a Mexican, a Honduran, he has the same constitutional rights you do, okay? And he can't have less. But what we have in practice is an abusive enforcement of Title 55 and Title 65, the transportation statutes in Tennessee law. Now, what I've done in public service to our city is to give notice. I've given notice of the law through, now write this down, okay? Please write this down. Yeah, write that down, but also write down the phone number. It's 800-8949, 800-8949. It's called Transportation Administrative Notice, and it's it's effective a plea and a warning without making any arguments. The warning, well, let's talk about the plea. The plea is that the statute, the document doesn't make any arguments itself. Okay, it's just a rehearsal of statute and court cases, and also U.S. Code 49, the federal transportation statute. These laws control transportation. Transportation is the profit-seeking, for-profit commercial use of the people's roads. The roads belong to the people of Tennessee. The state is the steward, and the state regulates transportation in the public interest, which is to say, for the health, safety, and welfare of people like you, my listener, your wife and your children, your neighbors and your friends, and people you work with at the office or the factory. They're all protected through the transportation code, because transportation involves the use of heavy trucks, 18-wheelers, dump trucks, concrete mixing trucks, straight body haulers that carry furnishings of people moving from place to place, bus line operators. They're subject to transportation laws. So are Uber drivers in the Tennessee code. Also, courier services, haulers of all kinds, covenant transportation, all groups like that, they are subject to transportation. But what about you? You're just a person in a car going from point A to point B. Well, you've entered into the transportation realm by application, but probably if you're not actually involved in transportation, you are, in fact, on the highway traveling freely as a matter of right. Now, we all think that we are subject to the police at every point, but you're not. If you're not involved in a particular day or a particular hour, say when you're stopped by the blue lights, in the act of transportation, you are in fact a traveler, not an operator and not a driver. Now, the cops pretend that everybody's a driver. They pretend that everybody is an operator, which are legal distinctions, right? A traveler behind the wheel of a car is legally different from a driver or an operator. And yet we assume they're all the same, that there is no distinction. But the notice gives alert to the county and to the city, my first areas of labor on this point of racial reconciliation, of the distinction between travel and transportation. And what I'm proposing to the city council is that it take charge of this. If Mayor Burke won't act, then the city council may choose to act to make us a haven by limiting the enforcement of those two titles upon transportation only, and not upon whom? Well, upon people who fill the jail. Do you know how many people are in the hellhole downtown of a jail? Do you know how many people are in the tender care of CoreCivic, the for-profit prison company over at Silverdale? Well, there are hundreds, and hundreds come through, and they're entrapped in the system because they are on the road and they're stopped for something that is not a crime. Now, here I want to just mention how they got stopped. They got stopped under what's called probable cause. Probable cause is allowed under the Constitution only if there's a crime that's been committed, or only if the officer or the person who is making the arrest has seen a crime, or has a report of a crime, or has a warrant for that person's arrest. Every traffic stop is an arrest. Okay, the Chattanooga police rules at, let's see, OPS 42 arrest procedures make it very clear. Every traffic stop is an arrest. You are required by this rule, under the CALEA certification standards, you are required to be read your Miranda rights at the moment your window goes down, and the cop's feet can be heard scrunching up past your back bumper to your side door and making an address to you. At that moment, he has, under our city rules, a duty to Mirandize you, and it is an arrest. It's an arrest under State versus Raspberry, Criminal Court of Appeals, 1982, and State versus Garcia, 2003. Those cases are fascinating cases, but in the end, we have this rule, and that is that a traffic stop for Fourth Amendment purposes is an arrest, and the rule for Miranda kicks in. Now, the cause for the arrest, for the cause of the stop, can be a very slight thing that's not a crime at all. It could be a traffic infraction, having no tag light on your car. The man behind the wheel when Demetrius Coonrod last year, the city councilwoman, was arrested, that was a tag light was out. And the case about Cameron Williams, C. Grimey, the hip hop artist in Chattanooga, whose story I will be posting very soon. The car that was stopped in front of him and his girlfriend, Nikki, had a tag light out and was one day expired. These are not crimes; these are infractions under the Transportation Code. And of course, no Miranda was read in any of these cases. Now, the problem is that the Title 55 reduces the threshold for when probable cause exists. Not to crime, no longer are crimes in view, but simply infractions of the Transportation Code for people involved in transportation. The petition that I make to the city, in addition to the threat and warning in my notice, is that they need to know, first of all, what the state law is. They need to establish the distinction between travel and transportation. And the city council, I suggest, meeting every Tuesday, should establish a limit on the executive branch. That's Mayor Burke. Mayor Burke is involved in every arrest in Chattanooga. The police department operates with the leave and permission of Jim Hammond. It is a professional courtesy. It is outside the statute. But it does operate as if it did have full enforcement authority on every title in the code. All right, every title in the code is presumed to be within the authority of the police department. We have an executive branch use of Title 55 and 65, and parts of that are there. There's a grant in the state code for Chattanooga, to enforce certain provisions in Title 55 by police power. Okay, so but the police power under that title is limited to what? To transportation. Okay, so you, my listener, traveling in your private car, your pickup truck, you're not involved in that. You're not subject under Title 55, and yet the presumption of probable cause has been put to the floor, because every officer presumes that every infraction under Title 55 is in fact probable cause to stop a private party. And so we have people being taken to the hellhole when they're arrested or cited to either sessions in the county or city in the city jurisdiction. So the plea is at this point that the city, through the council, through the people's representatives, take charge and pull back the police powers if the mayor will not. The city council can be appealed to, and I appeal to it as I would a father or a mother, that each looks out for the residents as if they were their own children. And that accounts for the fact that many residents are ignorant. Not only are they poor, not only are they minorities, not only do they maybe not speak good English, not only have they been through public schools and remain illiterate and ignorant of their rights, but they are foreigners, right? They're foreigners, and they do not know how to assert their rights. And so, given that the weakness of the people in Chattanooga is so great, the council, with a feeling of patronage, with a feeling of care, with a feeling of matriarchal benevolence or even patriarchal benevolence, looks out for the interests of these common people. So the city council, as you go to yournews.com today, you can read my story. The questions I'm asking Jim Hammond about his authority. And so there needs to be, as I suggest, a question inserted into the arrest protocol. The officer comes up, and the first question he asks is not the usual one, but this one. Ma'am or sir, are you using this car or truck for hire and in commerce? That's the question. Sir or ma'am, are you using this car or this truck for hire in a capacity that's in commerce? And if the answer is, what are you talking about, man? I'm just taking my kids to soccer practice. If that's the answer, clearly the answer is no. And this person is not involved in commerce and thereby not subject to Title 55. Now, if that person's license is revoked, what about that? Well, it doesn't matter. If that person's license is revoked, suspended, expired, or none, it doesn't matter. Think of the blessing this would bring to a Hispanic community in Chattanooga. What would La Paz say about this? What would La Paz do by way of jubilation if we became a free city under the Constitution, insisting on the rule of law? Because that's what I'm doing, the rule of law. This serves the interest of the so-called right. The right wingers, who want to have rule of law against immigration. Well, here we have the rule of law, and guess what? It favors the immigrant. It favors the stranger. It favors the ignorant. It favors the poor person, the orphan, and the widow. So every traffic stop after that, if the question is yes, I'm a courier taking frozen hearts. I'm just leaving town to take a frozen heart to a hospital in Cookeville. Okay. What we have there is an admission that this person's in commerce. So now the question of the officer is, could I see your license, your proof of insurance, and your registration of your vehicle? Because every car in commerce is a vehicle. It is a motor vehicle. Just read the definitions. Go to administrative notice. Go to yournews.com and read this notice. It's very important that you do. If you care about Chattanooga, if you care about the right issues, you'll go there and you'll read what I'm saying. I'm not making this stuff up. This is for your benefit, and it's for the benefit of Chattanooga. So the question is, if we end a long-time oppression outside the scope of the law, an action which is called ultra vires, which means in Latin, outside the power, an action in Chattanooga, in Hamilton County, outside the power, what we have is a haven. What we have, think about it, a sanctuary city. And it's from the right? It's from the conservatives, right? This is a conservative sanctuary city. Think of the benefit this brings to Michael Gilliland and the Marxists and the socialists and all those parts of Christianity who care about the poor. Think how exciting this becomes for them. This is my argument. This is David Tulis. I'm sticking with it. And this is serious business. This is an opportunity for Chattanooga City Council. It's an opportunity for Mayor Burke to bring relief, bring a kind of reparation among the black from the white political legal establishment, which has gone on unimpeded for decades, unimpeded until now. David Tulis.
Traffic, news, and information. Nooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3